Today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers on the Varsity Podcast Network is brought to you by Varsity Search. Varsity Search builds great teams by connecting lawyers in Texas with career opportunities at small and boutique law firms. So if you're thinking of making a move or your law firm is looking to hire, please go to varsitysearch.com and book a time to visit right into my calendar. Varsity Search, building great teams. Hey everyone, Daniel here back with you on Lone Star Lawyers. I hope you and your family are both healthy and safe. Before we get into this episode, I want to let you know that we have two brand new opportunities to tell you about, both of them in Austin. The first is an associate position with a high-end estate planning boutique, and the second, a senior associate or junior partner level attorney with an education law firm with a special focus on special education. These and other positions are listed on our website, varsitysearch.com/lawyers. Scroll to the bottom, you'll see them there, or you can email me, daniel@varsitysearch.com, for more information. All right, today we stay in Dallas, where our guest is Jennifer King. Jennifer is a partner and civil litigator with Burford Ryburn, where she focuses on medical malpractice and healthcare law. She has been a Texas super lawyer the past 2 years after being a rising star for 6 years, as well as being named a Best Lawyers in Dallas by D Magazine 6 different times. And Jennifer has served on the Dallas Women Lawyers Association Board of Directors, as well as several committees of the Dallas Bar Association. And she is also a prolific writer and speaker. All right, with that, let's hop into our conversation with Jennifer King on today's Monday Mentors episode of Lone Star Lawyers. Jennifer King joins us right now. Jennifer, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us.
It is my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm excited to visit with you. And I mentioned a couple of things in the introduction here before we got started, but I'd love for the folks listening to hear about you and your practice and your firm. So why don't you fill us in on what it is you do?
So I'm a partner at Burford Ryburn in Dallas, Texas, and that is a firm that it's over 100 years old. I'm certainly not, although rapidly approaching that mark. But
no, you look good for 100. You look good for you look great for 100. I hope I'm there.
I know. In fact, we had a campaign when we turned 100 several years ago, and the campaign was, we had older lawyers, our younger lawyers. At the time, I was a younger lawyer, and it was I am 100 years old, and it was kind of the play on the firm, and but it had like me, and some of the older partners were saying, "Don't put my picture with that phrase." Like I actually look near that age, so I was at the time probably in my 20s, so I was fine, but.
That's pretty remarkable, though. For the firm to be around that long, that's amazing. I mean, there's just not that many that can say that.
It was amazing in that year that we did turn 100. What I remember most is we did 100 things for different businesses around Dallas. For instance, we collected 100 teddy bears to give to the police department at one of our hospitals so they could, hand it out to kids. We did 100 hours of community service, 100 built, planted 100 trees. So we really did give back to the community that had treated our firm so great over the years. So that was a fun celebration. But so to get back to your original question, so I'm a partner at Burford Ryburn, and what I do is I do professional liability defense. Primarily, I represent hospitals, doctors, nurses, other healthcare providers when they're sued or in front of their boards.
Right.
And then I also provide some general counsel services to my hospital clients. We're talking about peer review meetings or hearings, end of life discussions, those types of things. And then I also represent lawyers when they have been sued or in front of the State Bar of Texas. And so I do that work as well. And my firm as a whole, we're more of a general defense practice. We have a board certified employment lawyer. We have a person who's devoted to appellate practice, who really is my right-hand person because I get her involved at the beginning of all my cases so that I can make sure that as I'm preparing a case, that she makes sure that I'm not going afoul of what I'm eventually going to need to prove at trial and have it being upheld on appeal. Yeah. And she's brilliant. So I love having her on the team. We also have business and commercial liability defense. And we have a lawyer who does general tort defense litigation, who does some medical malpractice defense, represents some banks and premises liability, some grocery stores with premises liability, large energy companies, line contact cases, those types of things. So, and we also have somebody who does contracts and drafts contracts. I myself will occasionally write a will or a trust for a family member or friend. I think we all do.
Right.
Right. You know, we used to have a devoted probate lawyer when I first started at the firm, and he was amazing. He's since passed. But he taught me a lot, so I'm at least able to offer that to close family and friends. But the one thing that I don't ever get involved with, or in really, we don't ever really do any criminal law or any tax law. Those are kind of the two areas where I have great referral sources to send those people to. Yeah.
Well, it's a wide ranging practice. For sure. And I want to ask you a little more about your specific area and within professional liability, particularly in the medical field and hospitals and providers, all of that. And I'll start this with sort of a before COVID, what had been kind of the most recent developments in that area of the law? Obviously, in Texas, we know about tort reform in the early 2000s, but in the last maybe 3-4 years leading up to kind of, and I'll ask separately about COVID, but what had been going on in that area? What had your clients been facing? What have been any changes to the law that have been significant in recent years?
You know, there's always discussion after tort reform about changing the caps and adjusting those, and especially the non-economic damage caps, which were a huge change at the beginning of my practice.
Right.
And there's always discussion about whether there's going to be an agreement to increase those caps. And it seems like every legislative session, there's at least a conversation about it. I will say that there had been what I perceive as a loosening of the expert report requirements that were required under Chapter 74 of the Texas Civil Practice and Remedies Code. And that has led to some interesting developments, regarding expert reports. Yeah. And, I would say if you're on the plaintiff side of things, then you've been really happy about the development and kind of the loosening of the requirements. My clients would be less happy about those developments. Right. But I think what it led to is, I think probably one of the first questions that I get anytime that I go interview students on campus is, once they find out what practice area that I primarily am in, they'll ask me, or they'll tell me that what they've heard in school or kind of out and about is that medical malpractice is no longer a viable practice area since tort reform. Right. And really, I'm as busy as I have ever been, and I was practicing pre-tort reform. Obviously, right before tort reform passed, all of us were very busy because everybody was filing cases before the deadline to be on pre-tort reform cases. And that took several years to unwind. And then after that, I think that we did see some firms, certainly people, move into other areas of the law. But I and the people that I know who specialize in the area really have not stopped being busy, and over the last few years certainly seem to be busier. So pre-COVID, I would say that, I don't know if it's loosening of the expert report requirements or if We were seeing more people start getting back in, plaintiffs' lawyers getting back into medical malpractice. But for whatever the reason, I'd say pre-COVID, we were all busy.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. And then obviously COVID hits, and then, I assume there's a delay from COVID hitting to whatever litigation may arise from any types of medical claims that have been generated over the last 7 months. But I'm sure there's also counseling that's going on with clients and avoiding of liability and all of that. So tell us a little about what that's been like.
Yes, COVID really has. So I'll take us back to March when we first started thinking about COVID and started hearing about it. I was in San Antonio at a hospital when the first COVID cases that were being announced in San Antonio were there. And I remember reading at the time and people telling me, hey, Jennifer, by the way, there's COVID out in the community. And I remember thinking, oh, really? I'm at the hospital. And so but I've been in hospitals since, 2001. And so I am always using, I'm always washing my hands. I'm always using the sanitizing stations. So none of that changed. But then I drove from San Antonio to East Texas to another hospital. And I remember it was so just still in there. There were no people. There were no people in the emergency department. There were no people in the hospital. They had locked most of the doors that let in so that there was only a single entry and exit point. Yep. And then it was at that time that we started hearing about the closures and everything that was going to happen. And then that I drove back to Dallas, and that was the very last meeting that I had in a hospital, in months and months. And the only time that I've been into a hospital since then have been for things that must be under statute done in person. Right. And otherwise, COVID has turned my practice into a mostly virtual practice. And that's for not only the safety of the lawyers, but when my clients are healthcare providers, they see COVID on a daily basis. And what is most important is patient care. And the last thing that I want is to bring COVID into a hospital or to bring it out with me. So that's, I think, was a big difference. And everybody's doing everything virtually, but my clients had the additional stress, I think, of now we're dealing with a new entity, a new virus, a pandemic. And so litigation really started taking a back seat to employee health concerns, getting enough PPE to their employees. So whereas I might be talking to risk managers about a lawsuit, they in that same day would be dealing with, do their workers have enough PPE? Or do we have all of these safety precautions in place? And so my clients were dealing with the actual healthcare aspect of COVID at the same time of trying to, deal with having lawsuits at the exact same time. But luckily, I will tell you, I didn't have a single plaintiff's lawyer who, when understanding what clients were going through, who pressed. And most people were absolutely happy to press things out for months and to postpone things. And I will say in March, I certainly didn't realize that in March, that in October, we would still be doing everything virtually. I think I was a little naive about what the impact would be. And so, we all kind of put things off for a while. And then when it became clear that we wouldn't be able to start doing things in person, we all had to develop virtually and pretty quickly. We had to adapt to the technology. Right.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I can't even imagine what the last 6 or 7 months has been within the healthcare providers, the facilities, all the doctors, nurses, staff, everybody. Just like it's really hard to comprehend. My sister is a radiation therapist in Dallas, and so I've kind of gotten some of the perspective, obviously from her, but especially people really front lines on treating and dealing with this. I just can't even. I mean, and maybe seconded by the schools and the teachers that are trying to figure out how to teach my 3 crazy kids right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Both virtually last spring and then at least for now in person, but in a much different environment. So basically just, the real front lines here are crazy. Well, is there anything that you've either learned or just as a strategy or as a tool or throughout this virtual practicing season that we've had that that you think has been helpful for you in thinking about moving forward and ways to create kind of the most effective, either what's a setup in your house or it's learning how to use specific features within Zoom or just anything at all that you've learned that over these last few months and really gotten better at, good at, anything like that?
So I will say one of the first things that we all kind of started hearing about Zoom
right.
and the capabilities. And my friends and I, who, and I have a lot of really good friends who do what I do, other lawyers who practice medical malpractice. And we would practice together on Zoom. We would get on in the evenings and we would, we'd have a glass of wine and we would try to figure out all the features because
this is so great. I love this.
Because we would share documents. We would, figure out how to make people raise hands, how to do the chat feature, how to switch back and forth between video, how to turn the microphones on and off, how to change people's names just for fun. Right. We just really learned all the features that we possibly could. And I will say those sessions with just friends, just trying to learn the platform, I adapted very quickly to the Zoom platform. I've had mediations, depositions, hearings, countless meetings, pre-deposition conferences, all by Zoom. Yeah. And I have not, in fact, in some ways it's easier because I represent hospital systems all throughout Texas. And the story that I told you in March where I was in San Antonio and then drove to East Texas in the same day, that was not unusual for me. It was not unusual for me to be maybe in Corpus Christi and then in Texarkana and then also San Antonio and Dallas all in the same week. Yeah. So the technology has really made it easier on me with the travel. Now I'm sad I don't get to go see people in person. I have lots of friends, clients and co-defendants and things like that, and even plaintiffs' lawyers. So I miss out on those in-person travel experiences and meeting people face-to-face. And some things I certainly believe are better face-to-face versus Zoom. Yeah. But I became proficient in using that platform and really seriously through Zoom happy hours. I would say that was the key to my success is the Zoom happy hour with friends trying to figure out the same thing.
Yeah, that's so great. I'm so glad that you told that story because, I think, and it was, I want to say it was Holly Davis and Chris Kirker, family lawyers in Austin, who we had on the show about a month and a half ago, who really emphasized, I think having, any meeting you would normally have by phone, do it by Zoom, just to learn. Even if you don't have to, just do it by Zoom so you can have more and more and more and more practice, basically like what you guys were doing in the happy hours and in the evenings. And I think that's really great advice. And for those that are still, you maybe haven't had the opportunity to really learn and dig down into some of these tools, it's not too late. It's going to be with us. So take full advantage. Is there anything that you're hoping sticks around post-COVID? I know you've mentioned some of these things are easier for you, but obviously you miss out on some of the stuff from being in person. What are you hoping sticks after COVID is gone? What are you hoping kind of returns to normal or pre-COVID?
I really I personally like, and I'm still, you can tell from the background here, I like working from home. I do like working in the office as well. But the home environment, I'm completely in control of my home environment. I'm in control of when I take breaks. I'm in control of when I speak to people. I'm a little bit of a control freak. And so I really like having my things the way that I want them, which I can at home. So, and I think that's around to stay. I think people are going to be working from a combo of the office and home. Now, certainly that isn't the same for everybody, because I had partners and associates who have young children or children at home, and it became more difficult for them to try to find a workspace that was separate and apart from the kids' school space. And so that, I think, was certainly, those people certainly needed a separate office space. I don't have children. I have 3 dogs who do like to participate in Zoom. They're currently locked in another room, or else I would have 3 dogs up here with me trying to participate in my in the podcast. And they're vocal. They like to speak as well. So I didn't have that. I didn't have that particular challenge, but I know others did. Yeah. I do like this aspect too, because anything that would have been difficult to travel for, we did by phone. Right. Zoom, I think, has made my normal telephone conferences so much more effective because we can both share things. If I'm on a Zoom with a radiologist, that radiologist can bring up the imaging and use their cursor and tell me exactly what they're talking about. I can take screen grabs. I can, take screenshots. And so that, I think, has been good, and I think will stick around. And I really like Zoom mediations.
Someone was just mentioning that to me recently, how productive they've been in those. Yeah.
They've been very productive, and especially if you have clients who have to travel, arranging those and scheduling those. So if you, in a typical case, I'm in Dallas, I might have a Houston lawyer on the other side. I might have a client who's out of state. I might have a doctor who's in East Texas, or a nurse who's moved. And this platform allows everybody to participate without having to worry about everybody's travel schedules. So what might have required a 2-day travel, now you just get on your Zoom, and you don't have to worry about people saying, I've got to leave in the middle of this important negotiation to make a flight, or I've got to stop so that I can change my flight. So I really like the mediation platform for Zoom. Now, I don't think it'll work for all of them, but it certainly has worked for the majority of my mediations over the last several months. Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see. I do think a lot of this will stay. It'll be fascinating to watch how that plays out. I want to change gears a little bit and ask you, for mostly our audience, mostly associate attorneys, and probably in their first few years of practice, what are a couple of things that they can do to stand out in their firm, to become a valued member of the firm and become a go-to person for a partner? What are some things that you look for that you've seen other associates do, maybe that you did even as an associate, that you feel like would be good for them to know?
I think availability and responsiveness are 2 very important things for an associate. My mentor, the person who became my mentor, Bob Beggart in the firm, there was one day, and I hadn't done any work with him yet. I was a very new associate within the first few months of practice. He was the medical malpractice and legal malpractice defense attorney in the firm. He headed that practice group. And I really hadn't had very many interactions with him. And it was at lunchtime. And most of my fellow associates had left for lunch. And I was sitting at my desk working on a project. And I remember seeing him walk in front of my office to go past me to ask another associate to work on a project. And I heard that other associate say, "I'm too busy." And so then he walked back past my office and then backed up, looked in and peeked at me and said, "Do you have time?" And it would not have mattered if I had no time whatsoever. I said, yes, absolutely. Followed him to his office. And that one moment, that one associate saying no and me saying yes, changed the trajectory of my career. That one moment.
Isn't that
and I always made sure if he was in the office, I was in the office. I was there at the same time in the morning. If he didn't take a lunch, I didn't take a lunch. If I did not leave unless, of course we all have obligations outside of work, but my goal was not to leave until after he had, so that I could be available if he had a need. And then I also am very responsive. I was responsive to not only my partners, but also my clients from very early on. I think in the digital world that we live in, clients have an expectation that emails are going to be returned and returned promptly. Calls are going to be returned promptly. And even if it's an evening, even if it's a weekend, I've always been responsive and available. So I think those are things that, for me, led to success in my very early career and partnering me up with that mentor and who really set me on the path to success.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's great stuff. I do want to follow up on the availability piece with you, because I know from talking to lawyers, young lawyers, one of the struggles they do have, and I think it's legitimate, is especially when they're in a firm where it can be anyone, partners, any partner or any even maybe senior associate that might give them work without coordinating it or whatever. And so an associate, especially if they've already proven themselves to be good and valued, may get a lot of work put on them. How do you advise someone who does feel like, okay, I want to be available, but at the same time, I know that I'm probably not going to be able to do a good job or do it on time if I keep saying yes to it all. How do they go about navigating that and communicating?
I am the worst person on the planet to ask that to, because
this is why we had you on the show, for that reason.
Exactly. Because I never said no. Yeah. And as a result, I worked nights. I worked weekends. And still do. Still do to this day. But that's me. That's what I want to do. I get worried and nervous if that's not happening. So it's my personality to want to work and work at capacity all the time. We all say, oh my gosh, I just need to slow down. I just need to take time. But I will say I do that. So I might have in any given month 3 solid weeks where I'm just in meeting and deposition and mediation after another. But then I might take off for 4 to 5 days and go to Florida to meet some friends for some downtime. Yeah. During that time, I will absolutely check emails, return client calls, things like that if needed. But I'm not doing that. And so for me, the key has been periods of very heavy workload followed by scheduled downtime. Yeah. And so for me, I have to schedule my downtime. But it's difficult. Good associates are going to get work. If you are a good, smart, skilled associate, partners are going to want to give you work. And you're going to want to say no, or, oh my goodness, I've had enough. So what I do as a partner, because I realize that I'm going to encounter people like me, is what I say is, tell me, you please tell me, I'm going to assign you as much as you'll take. If it becomes too much, you need to have a conversation with me and we'll talk about it. Because the last thing that I want, it's not productive for anyone, for my associates to have burnout. It's not productive for me to have it. It's not productive for the associates to have it. And if you lose that passion and you lose that drive because you're simply just overworked, then that's not helpful to anyone. So I'd say, develop the kind of relationship with the people who give you work to where you can talk about things like, okay, I need some more guidance on, here's the projects I have, let's triage them together. And a lot of times that's what it is. It's looking at your project list and triaging it and, and having that expectation. I always tell associates, if I don't give you a deadline, you ask me, because you've got to manage my expectations. And so
right.
If you just tell me I can do this, but I don't think reasonably I can get it to you until next week, is that okay? And if it is, great. And if it isn't, well, then at least I know, and I've got to figure out another solution. So I think communication is key. And I think I think communication and having those relationships with the people that assign you work is the key to any young associate trying to figure out that balance.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm glad that two things I want to just kind of hammer home, because I think it's so good is, when we talk about work-life balance a lot here, and I know one of the things that you mentioned was, kind of the segments, in the sense of having maybe 2, 3, even more weeks on, like all the time, going, but then taking a few days off where you're basically just checking email, getting back to people. And it's not this like every day the same thing, or every week the same amount of work and not work or whatever. So I'm glad you said that. And then the other thing is with regards to prioritizing and triaging, because I do think most lawyers are going to say yes a lot of the time, and probably more than what they have the capacity for. But having that communication with the partner to figure out, okay, I can do all this, but I am going to have to figure out which one I do first, which one is due first, and communicate that back so that everyone's not sitting around waiting for me. And even though I am going to do it all, it's just a matter of getting it done, right on the timeline that can work for everybody. So that's great stuff. The last subject that I wanted to cover as we kind of wind up our time is on hiring. And I'm curious, when you are in the process of hiring an associate, and like I said, our audience mostly practicing lawyers, associates right now, so kind of on the lateral market side of things. What are some key things that you're looking for, whether it be in the resume review or even in an interview? What are some of the key things you're looking for to determine whether they would be a good fit with your firm and your practice?
I think with respect to your resume, when you're looking either OCI or looking at laterals, you're going to get a stack of resumes, and everybody who's a licensed attorney, has a certain, you already know your license. We're all smart enough to have passed the bar exam. We're all smart enough to have graduated from law school. For me personally, I'm looking at, if it's a lateral, I'm looking at what your experience has been, what firm you've been with, because at least if you're in Dallas, then there's a good chance that I know your firm. There might be, if you're wanting to come work in the medical malpractice section at my firm, it's likely I know you and I know your work. Yeah. But then I also look at the skills and activities section, because to me, I learn about people. Sure. And then the way that I like to interview people is I like to interview them by taking them out to dinner. I like to take them, if they have a significant other, their significant other, my significant other, maybe there's another person from the firm, because, my firm, when I interviewed, I walked into a room of every lawyer in my firm at that time, and that's how they interviewed me. Yeah. And I was struck by how everyone was talking and joking and giving little jabs and at each other. And it was really an atmosphere that I thought, I want to be a part of this. Yeah. So when I'm choosing an associate or someone to come work, I'm choosing someone who I hope to be my partner one day. And so I want to know, do we hit it off at a dinner? And that to me is a perfect setting to to talk to you and get you to loosen up a little bit, and,
right.
and maybe and I can get you outside of the office and just know, do you have a personality that I think that would blend in well with the firm, or a personality that would kind of blend in with mine, because we're going to be spending a lot of time together, and I think it's important to like each other. And so I'm going to be, in an interview, I want a personable, good stories, able to communicate with me. And then on the resume, I love seeing interesting activities. If you tell me that you like, hiking some sort of mountain, then I might want to talk to you just about that.
Yeah.
If you put that your favorite book is a book that maybe I love, maybe I want to talk to you about that. Or, somebody, sometimes they'll tell me that they like to cook, or that they like to run marathons. And those things are just interesting to me. And so that makes me want to talk to you more if I see something in your activities that it's got to be something that stands out, right? So at least for me. Grades, if you're talking to people who are in the top third or the top quarter of their class, everybody's going to be smart. Everybody's going to be smart. If you're talking about a licensed attorney, then everybody's gone through that process. So really for me, it's personality and what other things do you like to do in your spare time that make you a whole person? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And if people might be chuckling at home listening to you right now, because the last couple of episodes, we have been talking quite a bit about the interests section and activity section on resumes. And what you described is almost verbatim what I've been telling them, and it's so great. I promise I didn't plant that answer on Jennifer. If anyone knows Jennifer, they know I could never do that. She is speaking her mind. So that is... that's great that you covered that, and especially those interesting interests.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah, which are great. Well, we are running out of time. Is there anything that we haven't touched on yet that you would want to share before we move into our rapid fire questions here to end our time?
I think that what I'd like to say is people who want to practice, and people who want to practice, especially in litigation, which is what I do, I'd encourage you to seek out those opportunities in your law firm and seek out those partners that you can have those opportunities with. Yeah. I think that in today's market and in today's, practice, I think getting in with those people and then watching how their path to success and knowing how they do it. And I think that never let, the political climate or what we're hearing in the news or things like that, or, things that you're even hearing within the legal community. I would never want somebody to be discouraged from their passion by that. And so if you're passionate about it, go to a firm that shares that passion. Find partners who share that passion and get after it. I mean, litigation, you don't win at it by being timid. And so, if that's what you want to do, find the opportunities and make that path for yourself, because there's certainly opportunities out there, no matter your gender, no matter your race, no matter your ethnicity. The opportunities are out there and they're for you to take. And so I would encourage people to, just to get after it. That's what I'm saying. Get after it. That's my takeaway today.
Awesome. Well, all right, let's do our rapid fire questions. If you're ready for those, we'll jump in.
I'm ready.
Name the one trait or characteristic that you most want to see in an associate.
Hunger and passion.
I like it. What habit has been key to your success?
Responsiveness.
Your favorite app or productivity tool?
I'm going to be lame and say my smartphone. That's just what it is. I mean, that I can do everything that I need to do pretty much from my smartphone.
Yeah, that's where we're at today for sure. Your favorite social distancing activity?
Zoom happy hour.
Yeah, we talked about it before. The Zoom happy hour. You can both learn Zoom and have a good time and connect with your people. All right, last one. We joked about this a little before we came on. Your favorite legal movie?
Okay, it's a tie, and if you know me, you know that this shows all aspects of my personality. I'm going to say To Kill a Mockingbird and Legally Blonde.
Yeah, both. Yes, I love that. That is great. Well, Jennifer, again, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. We really appreciate it, and wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
All right, my thanks again to Jennifer King for joining us on the show today. If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider doing two things for me? Would you subscribe so you don't miss an episode? And then would you rate and review the podcast in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts? If you have suggestions or thoughts about the show, or if I could help you in any way, you can email me directly, daniel@varsitysearch.com. Also, don't forget to check our website for the opportunities we mentioned earlier, two in Austin that are brand new, estate planning and education, special education in particular. You can go to varsitysearch.com/lawyers and scroll to the bottom of the page and find those listed there. All right, that's it for today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers. Thanks again so much to each of you for listening. I'm Daniel Hare with Varsity Search, and we'll talk with you next time.